The real TikTok doc on the other side of the table from Jill and I. Ricky B, what's going on?
Not much. How are you?
Oh, so good. I feel like before we even get started in the conversation, Jill and I both know Ricky in different facets of our life. So I met the Browns, both Alexis and Ricky, at our CrossFit gym. So we both used to go to Blur back in the day. I think when I started, it was 2011, 2012. And I
Yep.
think that you and Alexis came really
13.
short after that.
Yeah, 13 was when I started.
Well, and if you have ever done CrossFit, Jill's a CrossFitter, we're all CrossFitters here, you know how tight-knit the community is. So
Very
once
much
you
so.
meet your people, once you find your gym,
Totally.
you like live life together. So it's been cool to grow and like come up together in a way because you got to see me in a really, I would say, valley part of my life. There was a lot of family, as we were talking before this,
Yeah.
we hit record, there was a lot of family trauma going on around myself and my sister, and stepping in to really help her when she was a freshman in high school. And that took a drain on me, which is a big part of why I loved CrossFit.
Mm-hmm.
But now Jill and I are taking what that was for me, and we're using it as a business. And now we get to have fun conversations with you. We'll get into what we're talking about here soon. But Jill, do you want to go down the rabbit hole as far as how you know Ricky B?
Yes, because again, the red thread that lives on with a lot of the people that we know is Lululemon.
Yes.
So I remember meeting you guys. I'm pretty sure you and Alexis had just gotten married. It was,
Wait, no, we got married in 06.
yeah, I was.
Did you meet her way back then?
I met her. So you guys were only maybe a few years into marriage.
Gotcha.
Yeah, and I just remember meeting
That
you
makes sense.
at
Yep.
Lululemon,
Yep.
and so I got to see.
Like 09.
Yeah, exactly.
Yep.
So I got to see obviously your love for one another really blossom and bloom. But I
Yep.
think again, the connection of us working out together,
Yeah.
being of, like-mindedness around CrossFit really
Yep.
drew us together. But Lululemon brought the most amazing people into my life. And then fast forward, your wife and I have always stayed connected with one another. But I think the coolest part is now I get to see you have such a booming, successful business and really have a different way that you approach your business, which we'll get into in a second. But where I got to see you a lot was at jujitsu.
Yeah.
So my boys, your boys would be on the mats together. And nothing brings me more joy than seeing people really evolve in their lives and get married and then have kids. So it's been a really fun journey to know you personally.
Yep.
And your family's just so incredibly beautiful.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah.
Same to you.
Thank
you, I'm sure one day, big family time. Here we go.
Well, no, I get to have my family in our business.
No,
so
that's awesome.
I don't want kids. That's something that I haven't wanted for a long time, just based on a lot
Yeah.
of what I've been through. But what's cool about my not wanting of kids is I really get to express that within our business.
Oh, yeah.
So even before we hit record again today, like we get to see your kids still, which is wild because we work with local school districts. So
Yeah.
we get to see them in action at some of the schools that we're connected to. And it's been fun to see them grow
Yeah.
up because they were always at the gym, whether it was at CrossFit Blur or with Carson at FSI. Like
Yep.
we've really gotten to grow together and then obviously grow apart. There's been years in between those connection points. But what we know in our business is what you do. What do you do? What do you do? Real TikTok doc? And that's not really
in real life,
in
I'm,
real life.
I'm not a social media star. No, I'm a plastic surgeon. So I'm a plastic and reconstructive surgeon. And I do mostly cosmetic now, but I do still do reconstructive work. I've always had a hand in breast cancer. Something that's really important to me is to help women kind of get through the happier stage of that process, the reconstructive process and rebuilding them. So that's what I do. And we're going to talk about this, but what's evolved for me over time is I think the common thread is fitness, right? Like because of CrossFit, we're all really into being healthy and moving our bodies in whatever manner that means. It doesn't have to be CrossFit, it's something, but from CrossFit really is what gave me my drive to really learn more about nutrition. It gave me a lot more perspective on, hey, listen, plastic surgery should be your last resort. That shouldn't be the first thing that you think about. The first thing that we should all be thinking about as physicians, in my opinion, no matter what we do, is helping patients see the light for nutrition and wellness. And that's where it all starts, because if we have good nutrition and wellness, we can prevent chronic disease. And so that's become a new focus of my practice, and something that I really have started to bring forth in my practice already, but to really to do more with.
Yeah.
It's
I
important.
remember seeing you at Jiu-Jitsu, and I was asking you, give me the lowdown. It's been a few years. And you were telling me that your med spa was kind of like the next phase or ideation of your business. And you were telling me that you're okay with men or women coming in, and they might be at a place that they're seeking some type of procedure, and you really like get into it with them around the holistic approach. Like, okay, well, talk to me about what you're eating. Are you working out? Because as opposed to just doing a nip and a tuck and calling it a day, you're really teaching them that it's so much more than just a procedure. It is a lifestyle.
It
and I
is.
was like, yes, Dr. B.
Well, and you've been talking about that for a while. I remember having
have.
conversations with you back in 2019 around the holistic approach. So not
Yep.
just offering
Yep.
what you just referred to as the nip and tuck, but there's so much more to it. And
Yeah.
I mean, that's the work we're in with girls, right? It's not just the conversations we're having around confidence. Then they have to go home, and there's got to be continuity between what their parents are saying. So it's a wheel. It's a whole entire approach, which is cool to hear you say that, because I was on your social media the other day and you posted a video around a comment that you've gotten around a gentleman really undercutting what you do. Like, you're just in it for the money.
Yeah.
And I think with shows, I don't even have to label whatever shows they are, but we see a lot of plastic surgery shows, and girls are coming in with their 17th boob job. And, like, we see the glamorized side of it, but we don't get to see behind closed doors in terms of the conversations you're really having with your patients to make sure that that's what they want. And I think that's really cool. It's a nice approach.
Yeah, that comment was interesting. So I had posted a video 2 days before. I came across a page of a girl who, her page is unbelievable. And she was posting some stuff about herself, and she's not ripped with a six pack, but she's also not obese and unhealthy. And my post was about, hey, every body is different, right? Like, you don't have to have a ripped six pack to be healthy. I know people who do have ripped six packs who are the most metabolically unhealthy people I know.
Right.
And I know people who we would call soft, which I call a normal body, who are metabolically healthy, which someone might say that they're overweight.
Right.
And so the point of that video was to say, listen, health comes in many different packages.
Right.
It's not just a ripped six pack. And there was a kid's comment on that post that said, it was basically like, yeah, laugh out loud, coming from the guy who like does cosmetic surgery. And it's really interesting because I didn't respond, and I don't usually respond to those comments. And I just let my fans come to the rescue, which is what always happens. Everyone starts, making comments back. And in the thread to him, he responded to someone who said something back to him, whatever. I have a sister who had multiple procedures, and I watched, thankless plastic surgeons take money from her, and she has body dysmorphia, and no one cared about her, and all they did were operations. And I was like,
Ding.
ding, ding. Okay, he's like projecting his
He's
anger to what
triggered.
happened to him and his loved one and his sister onto me, saying
Right.
that I am just like every other plastic surgeon. And so I made a rebuttal video, and the rebuttal was, look, man, it's not so much about that plastic surgeon. You're projecting this to everyone else
Yeah.
when we're not all
the
that
same.
way. Not every
Right.
plastic surgeon is the Hollywood botched, crazy lips,
Right.
boobs
Yeah,
surgeon.
yeah.
Most of us in the community are just regular people trying to do right by other people. And
Yeah.
there is a place for plastic surgery, and there is a place for the health and wellness side too. And he and I actually exchanged DMs behind
good.
closed doors.
Wow.
I'm that way. Like, I don't like to argue with people
Yeah.
in a post.
Right.
So I DM'd him and I said, hey man, I'm sorry if I offended you. Totally understand your pain and what's happening with your sister. I hope you understand my video. What I meant, he was like, I totally get it, man. You're right. I came at you because I was emotional.
Yeah.
And I totally understand what you're saying. And I realize that not every surgeon is that way. So that's
Well,
kind of how that went down.
And I think it's cool that you pointed out your followers came to your aid. And it's because you give so much valuable content. You do an incredible job of curating content that is of value to people. And if you don't know, he has a huge following on TikTok, which how is that to navigate? I don't know. But
7.8 million.
It's 7.8 million
exact.
followers
Yeah.
on TikTok, which, I mean, your videos are worth the watch. It's very cool to get
appreciate that.
like view of what plastic surgery is. And that's not all you go into. You go into the medical field pretty vastly. And I think that's kind of where we want to take this conversation. So this guy comes at you because his sister had botched procedures and he watched this happen to her because she had body dysmorphia. We work with teen and tween girls, so 10 to 18. And what we feel like Instagram, TikTok filters have done is create this image for girls to aspire to that is unattainable because it's not real. But in their mind, they have to do all of these things to get to that filter, right? The beauty filter on TikTok is just the base level filter. It smooths your skin. It's amazing. It's nice to put on.
It is pretty nice.
But what about
We like it.
We all
what about
love
the bold beauty filter, right? The new
Yeah.
one that doesn't change when you put your hand in front of it and
I
it
heard
just
about
it
that.
snatches your face. It's like, "Oh my God, is this how I could really look?"
Yeah.
So it feels like we're in a constant battle with conversations with girls about them being enough.
Yeah.
Right.
So we're curious to know how that's impacted your actual practice or what you've seen in the field with not girls 10 to 18. I'm sure you've had girls who are minors with maybe mom's permission coming in for consultations on certain things, but even their moms,
Yeah.
right? Because social media has a grasp on adults just as much as it does kids. And if we're not aware of that as adults, it can obviously impact our kids so much more. So what are you seeing in your practice?
You know, look, fortunately, I don't see a lot of people with crazy requests. There's no question that social media has an impact on the body image issue. But I don't have a lot of people coming in requesting crazy stuff. And I don't have a lot of young people coming in for stuff, mostly Botox and filler. And I have an injector that does that stuff. And we only do it for people who are doing it for the right reason. If they're underage, we don't do it. And so fortunately, you know, kind of what I alluded to a minute ago is we see all this out there on social media, yet I don't see it coming into my practice because of who I am and what I represent.
Right,
And I
your
don't, I wouldn't really do something unusual to a patient like that. Look, I've done breast reductions in 14-year-olds, but it's because they needed the operation.
Yeah.
They were
Yeah.
huge, you know, but I know that the perception is that people are coming in wanting that. And I'm sure there are offices that get that.
Yeah.
I just don't get a ton of it. I really don't. But it is an issue. The issue where I think this all comes down to is social media is not going away. It's not going anywhere. And it used to be, look, back in our parents' days, my parents' days in the 50s and the 60s, it was Cosmo magazine showing
Right.
these
Oh,
women.
yeah.
So it's
Right.
always been
Right.
around.
Yeah.
Social media has just elevated the visuality of being able to see all of this stuff. But I think it comes down to parents having real conversations with their kids. You know, not being present and not controlling social media is a big part of the problem. My kids aren't on social media. They're 13 years old. They actually don't want to be. For a little while, they were doing TikTok. We were letting them do it during COVID. And they both elected to delete their accounts after we got on them for allowing people to follow them without our permission.
Right.
You know, and kind of making
okay.
growing awareness about things that are happening in the world, and there are not always good people. But fortunately, I haven't had a lot of crazy young people coming in for lip filler and Botox and procedures. Not very often.
Well, and I as a mom too, I'm like, oh, that makes me feel really good. And what I want to highlight in that is you having a standard. So you not only as a father, but you as running this practice and having an image and that you want to uphold. That's really important. And I want to make the call out too around having conversations with your kids. You have to be in these conversations all the time with them. Because if it's not you, then who? Social media.
Yep.
Or their friends who know less than probably what your kids know. Those are the kids that are going to be influential. And we had a really powerful conversation with a gal named Katie McPherson, and she's local here, but does a lot of digital literacy and digital wellness. She's a consultant. And man, talk about something that really blew my mind was when we hand our kids a phone we're inviting. It's basically like opening your front door to your house and never shutting it.
Mhm.
Never being like, okay, well, you never know who's going to walk on in, or, so good on you to have these conversations with your kids so that they can feel empowered enough to be like, I just don't want to be a part of it.
Yeah, we have to tell our kids that they're enough. We have to tell our kids that they don't have to try to uphold the standard of who they see around them. I always say comparison is the thief of joy, right? And I mean, and we
Amen.
all do it. I do it.
Totally.
You do it. I get on social media sometimes. I'm like, why isn't my account taking off like some of my
course.
friends? We all
Yeah.
do that stuff. You have to check yourself and really remember that you are enough. And what is the goal here? Are you having fun? Are you educating? And I think sitting with your kids and just making them understand that this is not the standard.
Yeah.
This is not
He's
real
pointing
life.
to his phone, everyone.
This is not real life. I have my phone held up. This is not real life. This is people showing you the highlight reel of their best moments
100%.
and people not showing their worst moments. And I will say, on the topic of the filter, one of the nice things that I have seen on social media lately that I think is awesome is a lot of women being like, what is up with this filter? Okay, here I am.
Yeah.
Check me out. Now let me turn this thing off. Like, what?
Yeah.
the bold
Look,
beauty
like
filter.
just
Oh, yeah.
showing the with and without and with and without, and making people see, and hopefully young girls seeing and boys, they're like, hey, this really isn't the real thing. It's the highlight reel of what we're seeing.
100%.
The contrast between the two of those things. And it's important to showcase that. I'm not sure what your FYP looks like. Mine looks like a lot of different things because I'm constantly trying to source information for parents around these type of subjects. What are the need to know subjects
The
that
trends that kids are in and
It's
they're
insane.
into, and what they like. I mean, I see girls that we work with all the time, and I definitely feel like my mother saying this because I hated when she would be like, "What are you wearing?" But
Mhm.
now I'm like, you can't even recognize if a girl is 13 or 20
I know.
based off of just how beautiful, and she has access to TikTok that teaches her how to,
well, there was
snatch
never
her face
there was
and
never an
contour.
ugly face. Like
No.
I mean, I had the
I'm
bowl
like,
cut
whoa.
and two big buck teeth. Like there's it doesn't feel like there's a quote unquote ugly face.
Yeah.
And I'm saying that lightly. I'm not to mean any offense by it, but like I was very awkward, and it doesn't
awkward
feel
face,
like
yeah.
anybody's awkward anymore because of these tutorials
and the
and
dances
the hair and the dances.
yeah.
dances.
I was
Yeah.
like, did anybody ever do like sing-songy stuff? Like that
Oh,
was
God.
like what I did in 7th grade. But now 7th graders, I'm like, wow,
It's
Well,
a different
it's
world.
just
it's a different world.
And it always is going to be, right? Like it's
Ever
always going to be
evolving.
different from the way that we grew up to our kids, and our kids' kids are going to grow
Mm-hmm.
up different. It's just always going to change.
Well, and to your point, because Mary and I actually had this conversation yesterday around, remember like when we were growing up, like the dirty rap songs that we would listen to, and it like comparing
like
it
Trina,
to
Little Kim.
Yeah,
Totally.
comparing it now to what kids are listening to. And we had this moment, this conversation yesterday of like, but that music was just music to us.
Right.
Because we had parents and coaches and other people telling us and helping us really
Well,
establish who we were.
And we
at
weren't
some
bombarded
point.
by it.
And we
we're
weren't-
bombarded by it with social media.
Right. Where we got to kind of like get away. But now it's just in kids' faces all the time where they're like, well, I'm gonna now be her because mom
Yeah.
and dad are like very distracted doing work stuff, and I'm kind of on my own, and I'm trying to figure out who I am, and no one's really helping me do that. So guess what? I'm gonna turn to pop culture. I'm gonna turn to TikTok. I'm gonna turn to social media to help guide me in
look,
answering those questions.
in our day, like kids hung up posters of Magic Johnson, and that's what they wanted to be and become that. Now it's on your phone in front of you.
Right.
So
Yeah.
it's not going away. I think the conversations just need to happen,
Yeah.
and they need to be real with kids. And this is the problem, right? Like too many parents throw the device at the kid because it's a babysitter and they don't
100%.
want to raise their children and deal with them,
Right.
quote, deal with them.
Right.
And so I think there needs to be a little bit of, hey man, you decided to have children. This is not for the faint of heart. They need you to guide them through life. They cannot have a phone guide them through life. They cannot learn the things they need to learn
Yeah.
about life from anyone else but
Through a
you.
screen.
And that's what really needs to happen is parents need to step in and be like, look, enough is enough.
Yep.
we're already cutting their time on their iPads and stuff.
Yeah.
It's huge.
Yeah.
And it's hard for people
It's hard
because
to
now
do
we're
because they're
used
good
to
boys.
it.
Yeah.
Well,
Oh, totally.
They are, but same with our conversation with Katie McPherson the other day saying the same thing. It's like parents have that notion that their kids are good kids, so they're not going to do anything bad or
Right.
nothing bad will happen to them online because they're good kids and they're aware.
Right.
She said that obviously statistically is not the case at all.
Mhm.
Regardless of how good of kids they are, they're going to get distracted. Something is going to happen.
Mhm.
And exactly what you just said, they need you as the guider.
Mhm.
That's why you had kids, is to raise them in a way that is appropriate, and throwing a phone at them is not. I want to take a little detour or circle back to my FYP page because I stumbled upon this gentleman the other day who is 27 years old, and he had a plethora of surgeries all at the same time. So this was I hate saying it was a social media stunt, but he had, his face was 7 times the size of his face because he had several
So many.
surgeries at the same time.
Wow.
So he's got this side by side. It says 2019, before any surgeries, just botched fillers. Now, so we're at 2023, dissolved my filler and had 2 nose jobs, 3 lift lips, 3 lift lifts, 3 temple lifts, a full facelift. I can't pronounce that word. Canthroplasty.
Canthoplasty.
Blepharoplasty.
Blepharoplasty.
Thank you. Ears
Eyelids.
pinned, buccal fat removed, and a
Buckle.
neck
Yeah, buckle fat.
buckle fat removal and a neck liposuction.
Jeez, 27.
So he's 27, and I want to show you the picture of him.
Wow.
And I want to talk about this for a minute because in 10, 20, 30 years, what is this going to do for him? What are the repercussions that he's going to suffer because he decided to do all of these and at once as well?
Yeah, I don't think he's going to have any long-term repercussions. The problem here is that clearly if someone, number one, someone that age went to a surgeon who just doesn't care.
Yeah.
Right. Because they're not, and I wasn't there. So I wasn't with the surgeon.
Right.
I can only presume that a surgeon, he's a nice looking man beforehand
right.
and he's nice looking afterwards. You have to have an ethical surgeon look at this guy and be like, hey, what is the goal here? What are we doing?
Yeah.
Like, what are we trying to improve here?
Mm-hmm.
So that's number one. Number two, unless he had botched procedures, it's not going to harm him down the road. The question is, how much is this going to continue over time?
Yeah. So
And
mentally.
all of the crazy pictures you've seen me put up of people who've had like Donatella Versace, like the crazy amounts of filler and the crazy amounts of procedures. At some point, you do structurally destroy the nose where you can't not do anything further to help them. And you do start to structurally injure the integrity of the face and the soft tissues. So long term, if he continues to do that, it's a huge problem. The bigger conversation is, does he have body dysmorphia?
Yeah.
And how are we going to deal with that?
Yeah. Well, and taking what you just said. So if someone's listening to this, we have a lot of parents who tune into our podcast. And if their daughter is hyper aware of her image and that's all she cares about, that's all she talks about, she's constantly doing selfies or, and how do parents who might have like a little inkling be like, man, is this something more?
Mm-hmm.
Is this something more that I need to really
Address?
Yeah.
What would you say to parents that might be towing the line with that?
I think first is recognizing the problem, understanding that, wow, this doesn't seem normal what my child is doing right now. Really, really concentrated and focus on the way that she looks. Have that conversation. Why do you feel this way? I think that's really important, is starting with the conversation with kids. Where is it coming from? Figuring out the root cause. Who are they hanging out with? That's a big thing, right? Like we are who we hang out with.
Right.
So are they hanging out with people that only care about that stuff? And I think it all starts with a conversation. And once you recognize that, one thing I do like about this day and age and the time that we're in is mental health, and having a mental health specialist and a therapist talk with kids is so much more commonplace today than it ever
100%.
was,
Yeah.
which is a great thing.
Yeah.
And making it known like we did for our boys, right? So my boys are autistic. And you guys know that.
Mm-hmm.
And they're what we would call high functioning. I know that we don't like to say high functioning or low functioning. They have autism. They're autistic. And we started having them talk to someone for mental health like a couple of years ago.
Yeah.
Just because, they think different. They see the world different. We recognize that.
Yeah.
The therapist that I have in my practice, we haven't gotten into this yet, that helps my patients with their mental health, with body
that's
image and stuff. I
great.
have a mental health specialist.
Yeah.
She was an ABA therapist before
Cool.
she started doing some adult stuff.
Cool.
And Brody was having a really hard time in 5th grade because we separated the boys. They wanted to be in separate classes. So Alexis and I just realized like we need them to be comfortable talking to someone. So all of this to say, planting that seed in your kid's head that talking to someone doesn't mean there's something wrong with you.
Right.
It's just maybe you don't want to air out that conversation between me and you or me and your father.
parents, yeah.
But like, let's let you go talk to someone that might help you figure out what's important, because kids at that age are trying to figure the world out. And this world is so
100%.
crazy different now
Yeah.
that I can't imagine what it's like to be a kid who's 12, 13, 14, 15,
Totally.
18.
Yeah.
And something we were talking about the other day was just how much we're on a screen. So even on a Zoom meeting, like seeing yourself, right? We
Yeah.
we have an obsession almost with looking at who we are. So if you're cruising,
I've been asked that a lot since
God.
COVID. If facelift
yeah.
procedures went up since Zoom happened during
Stop.
COVID.
Oh, that's
Yeah.
funny. Did they?
I don't do facial cosmetic surgery anymore.
like, we won't anymore.
But I think there were a lot of people coming in for Botox and filler, and after looking at their
Looking
wrinkly
at
faces,
themselves.
yeah.
Oh,
Well,
yeah.
and that I think that can
I
be
caught myself doing that yesterday, and so I'm like, whoa.
yeah, my
look at those
eyebrows were eyebrow, and I
wrinkles.
do it as well.
And let's establish that it's okay to do that stuff.
1,000%.
There is a time and a place for it.
It totally is.
Yeah.
But I think one of the first steps you can take is looking at your child's social media if they have it, and or their camera roll. Because if there's an obsessive amount of selfies
Yeah.
in the same outfit from different angles, I think that's also an indicator that you need to have a conversation around how your child views themselves.
And taking charge with your kid and saying, like we tell our kids, when you get a phone, it is not your phone.
Right.
It is
Amen,
our phone.
sister.
We
I'm
have
letting you
access
borrow
to
this.
it. We have all the codes to it. We track everything on it that you do. It
Yeah.
is not your phone. We are honoring you by letting you have one. And if there's something that we don't like, we take it away and being okay
100%.
with that.
Yeah.
Say it again for the people in the back.
Well, and
because
what I want to say to kind of piggyback off you, Mare, was I saw a video yesterday, and it was the Kardashians,
Mhm.
and it was Khloe and Kim. They were sitting kind of back, and Kylie was doing one of their makeups, or maybe it was Courtney.
It was Courtney. Kylie
And-
was doing Courtney's makeup,
Yeah,
and she said
I saw
something
that.
Did you
about her
see that?
nose.
Yeah.
It was about her ears.
I totally watched that show with my wife.
I
mean, it's a guilty
I love
pleasure
it.
around
It's a
here
guilty
too.
pleasure. But what was interesting is like, someone that we idolize. A lot of girls idolize Kylie Jenner.
Yeah.
She's beautiful. She's successful. And watching her in this video yesterday when she was like, you guys used to make fun of me for my ears.
Mhm.
And they were like, we did? Very unaware. And she was like, yeah, you guys would call me Dumbo and pull my
Oh, I
ears.
remember that.
And Courtney goes, oh my gosh, I'm so sorry. And she goes, that took me down. Like for 5 years, I never wore my hair up because I hated my ears.
Isn't that crazy?
And guess
Yeah.
who has my ears now?
Her daughter.
Her daughter. And she goes, and I love her ears, which then made me love my ears. So it's interesting to just also call out that we have to be mindful of
Mhm.
how we're speaking to our kids too.
Totally.
Even
Not
if
just
it's
to
out
our
of-
kids, but about ourselves.
Right.
Because
Even if
obviously
it's
we're passing those
out
features.
out of out of play or humor or whatever. But
yeah, you know my brother's story.
Courtney, oh, I know.
Yeah.
Courtney was like, it was a total joke. We had
Right.
no idea that you were for 5 years
Yeah.
holding this and looking at yourself thinking you were less than. And we're like, that's Kylie Jenner.
And we
Whoa.
see this in body image all the time, right? Like I'm faced with patients who were told they were fat their whole life, or
Yeah.
and that's really hard for people, and it makes them hard to embark on the weight loss journey because they're like, am I able to do this?
Right.
Or am I always that person that I was made fun of, or can I make
Right.
change? And helping them realize through the mental health specialists I have that, yeah, you can make change. You're not who you were.
Mhm.
You're who you are now,
Well,
and
you're
who
not
you want to
other
be
people's
now.
perception of you either.
Yeah, exactly. Kids can be mean.
Kids are mean. They can't.
But they don't, I think sometimes they don't realize how mean they're
Mhm.
being.
Well,
Right.
and there's a lot to that in terms of what we're getting into with like, we have to have conflict resolution, right? So we have to give them opportunities to push back on us.
Mhm.
So maybe they don't want to make their bed. Allow them to get their jabs out at you. on you at home in those little things so they don't go to school and take it out on people who are just as vulnerable as they are within school. So there's a lot to, I mean, we see our kids as selfish, and if they're not compliant, then they're going against what mom and dad are saying. So do as I do, and you're grounded, or give me your phone, where the consequences aren't necessarily matching the behavior, and then that's carrying into school again. So yeah, kids can definitely be mean, and I don't think they understand how mean they can be. But there's things that we can do at home in order to prevent that.
Jill, I mean, you could probably identify with this, right? Like one of the hardest things with kids is being like in a moment, like I would do it this way. I want them to do it this way.
Ego.
Just do it your way. It's
Totally.
it's all good, man.
Yeah, man.
Like I wouldn't do it that way, but it's still not wrong. And instead of correcting them, it's hard to hold yourself back and just being like, yo, you fold it that way.
Right.
It's not going to affect it. And like
I'll try not to
correcting them
refold it
all the time. Yeah, but you do it later when they're not around.
'Cause I'm
But trying to
OCD.
correct them all the time makes them feel unimportant and like they don't have a
Like
voice
they're not
and
worthy.
their way is not good enough, you know?
We like to say, allow your kid to pull you.
Totally.
If you're pulling your kid, you got to check yourself, because
Totally.
you're going to wreck yourself and him
No
or her.
helicopter parenting.
No snow plowing, no helicoptering, man.
Yeah.
I want to circle back around to the Kylie Jenner part of this, because it's been in the news recently too. Like, she has claimed to not have had plastic surgery. Then you go to like the Jennifer Love Hewitt, who has claimed to change her
Just
hair
her
and not
hair.
her face.
Yeah.
What is that? Because we see it. We see the changes.
Yeah.
Obviously, that they're under a microscope. There's a lot of scrutiny there. I don't like feeling like I'm the crazy one. I'm like, clearly you've had plastic surgery.
Of course. And we don't know what, but it's obvious. The proof is in the pudding. You know, I just had this conversation with someone the other day in a post about should people, celebrities or anyone, have to admit that they've had procedures. And my point of view is no, they shouldn't have to admit it. But what they also shouldn't do is blatantly lie about it.
It's
Just
denied.
make
So
you feel
if they could,
stupid.
there's a way around it, right? Like,
Yeah.
have you had a BBL? Have you had a rhinoplasty? You know what? That's not a topic I feel comfortable discussing, rather than just be like, no, I haven't had plastic
changed
surgery.
my hair.
When everyone knows, when you see their before and
Right.
afters, I've posted this stuff about the two of them, looking at Kylie then and now. It's clearly rhinoplasty
Right.
surgery, clearly has had
Yeah.
facial filler, clearly has had other things done. I don't know about the BBL or anything like that,
Yeah.
but they've obviously had procedures and they have the financial means, and that's okay. That's their choice.
Totally.
100%.
But you shouldn't lie about it.
Yeah.
You should just say, I'm not comfortable talking about it. But when you lie about it, now you're making other girls that see you believe that you're naturally that way.
Right.
And now they're going to try to attain that.
That picture
By any
perfect
means
image.
necessary, right?
And that's a problem.
Yeah.
That's where we get into body dysmorphia, but then eating disorders and trying to attain things that are
Yeah.
just completely unattainable. And I'm sorry, girls will go to any length.
Yeah.
I mean, I remember it back when I was in high school, middle school. I was stealing my mother's Slim Fast. I was taking
yeah.
Hydroxycut.
Oh, yeah.
Oh my God.
Oh, yeah.
So crazy.
And
Uh-huh.
I did get a boob job when I was 19, but I clearly still have my implants, but that for me was not because I was like trying to like, do it for somebody else.
Mhm.
I grew up in a very Italian family who my mother, my grandmother always had really big breasts. And I was like, I was a gymnast growing up. I had nothing.
Nothing.
Yeah.
And I also have no hips. So I have kind of this boyish figure. It's very fit, muscular. And when I got this done, it just completed me. It
Yeah.
felt like, oh, okay.
Here I
I
am.
loved who I was, but
Yeah.
it just made me feel like, oh, now I have this piece of femininity that I was looking for. And I am totally against, or I'm for when people are doing it for the right reasons.
Yeah, look, it brings up a good conversation because I did an augmentation in a 19-year-old. Her mom came in for the consult, very similar story. And this is where I feel like it's up to the surgeon to understand the ethics. And I had a real talk conversation with her about, listen, implants aren't a joke. You're going to have them the rest of your life. This is not your only operation. You will have probably another one or two in your life if you decide to keep your implants for your whole life. We need to really make sure that this is what you're doing for yourself because you want to do it. And it was very similar, very, very pretty young lady, small chest. And look, people might hear this and go, well, so what? Love yourself. Just be who
Right.
you are. Look,
Yeah.
if we all were 100% confident in our skin
Right.
and felt that way, yeah, no one would do anything. But the reality is we all judge ourselves and look in the
Yeah.
mirror. And sometimes it doesn't mean that you don't love yourself or that you're confident. It just means you want something changed that you don't like. I had a rhinoplasty. So long story short, this girl I felt in our conversation was doing it for the right reasons. And so I performed the operation for her with her consent and her mother's consent. And I think there is a place for it. And I think that the society needs to really understand that it is okay to do stuff. Just make sure that the surgeon is ethical, that you're having real conversations with the patients about what they're getting into. And if all of those things align, then it's all good.
Then
Just
it's
like I
all
told you
good.
before we started, I've
Right.
done reductions in 14-year-old girls who were
Right.
so big that they couldn't go to PE or they're getting bullied.
Yeah, that's not cool.
That changes their confidence in the same way that you getting
100%.
implants
Yep.
changed your confidence.
My mom got a breast rejection. I was like, well, we could have just done a little swap, but
Yeah.
A little swip swap.
but I totally agree, 100%. I just I think it needs to be for the right reasons.
Yeah,
Well-
I just don't like surgeons that are randomly doing anything for anyone just to do the case
Just to
and
do 'em.
collect the money and move on. Like for me, I'm trying to shake up my industry. What I want to see happen is I would really like to see us focus more on health and wellness for being in a healthy body,
Yeah.
not for looking a certain way. I think it's okay to want to look a certain way, but even weight loss, I think weight loss is focused on the wrong thing. Weight loss is focused on getting skinny and being fit. No, weight loss is avoiding metabolic disease,
Heck
cardiac
yeah.
disease, metabolic syndrome, cancer, all the
Right,
things that can
yes.
really
Yeah.
harm you that are associated with obesity. The conversation should be, we're losing weight to be more healthy.
Right.
You don't need to be a rail. You don't need to have a six
Not
pack,
to
but we
look-
need to
yeah,
be in a healthy
a
place where
certain
lab
way.
values are looking good. Because I think if you guys haven't read the book called Outlive by Dr. Peter Attia, he was the doctor on, did you see the Chris Hemsworth show on Disney Plus, Limitless? Amazing.
Yeah.
So
Wait.
Peter Attia is the physician in that video.
Oh,
He's a
cool. Okay.
longevity specialist. And
Yeah.
I read his book and it's incredible.
Cool.
At a young age, as early as 15, we're seeing coronary artery disease in children. Some of it could be genetically related, but the fact of the matter is this cardiac disease is not a disease of 50, 60, 70, 80-year-olds. It started somewhere. There is
gosh.
no sudden heart attack.
It'll
What was
target
happening
you.
has been happening for 20 plus years in your
Yeah.
body. So the focus needs to be more on losing weight so that we're living in healthy bodies so that while we are alive, our health span is as good as it can be and
Right.
functional.
We talk about that a lot too in terms of while we're alive, right? We get one body and we're in this microwave culture where if it's broken, we can throw it away, we can replace it, we can fix it. And we can't do that with our body.
Nope.
So starting from within, that internal validation of how you love yourself, how do you start to love yourself? What are the practices that you can put into play in order to begin to have a healthy relationship with yourself without seeking external validation? And obviously, for all the reasons we've talked about today, that can be hard. I mean, I saw a headline yesterday that was from Demi Lovato, and she said something like, I feel the most confident when I'm having sex. And I was like, that's great. And you're telling people that you feel the most confident when you're getting externally validated physically and mentally. How are you validating yourself? How are you validating who you are as a person without somebody else telling you how to show up?
Right.
I just feel like that's such the wrong messaging. So I love your mission and vision overall. I love that you have a therapist. I'm assuming they come in with your 19-year-old cases to talk about
when I
things
need
like
them, when
that.
I
Yeah.
identify a patient who I feel is either struggling with the issue and they're not really maybe doing it for the right reason, or I've had one patient tell me, she goes, you know what? I definitely have a bad relationship with food and I probably would benefit from talking to someone. And she had a conversation with her. So we used to make everyone see them, just a quick 15-minute visit, but now it's more like if I think that someone needs them, I do it. And it's really, it's a whole nother aspect of my business. We can talk about it another day, but it's a concept that I would like to try to do in my company and then bring it forth to other practices around the country. Is just, I feel like everyone should be focusing on the mental health. Like there's enough people out there who you can't exercise breasts to be high and tight, right?
Right.
Like there's nothing you can do health and fitness to make your breasts higher and tighter if that's
Right.
what you want. There's enough people out there who will need operations because it's right for them and I can do it.
Right.
And I can make money in my business doing that, but I can also make money in my business guiding the ones who aren't there yet, who don't have the mental health to make the right decision, who aren't in the body to be able to have a good tummy tuck or to get the best result
Right.
yet.
Yeah.
Help guide them through that wellness journey so that when they do have surgery, now they're set up not only to maintain it, but they have done everything they can do physically to get into their best body. So now when they're going into surgery for like a tummy tuck for loose skin, they're thinking, look, man, I have maximized my
This is
ability
icing on the
to
cake,
lose
baby.
weight, to be healthy and be
Right.
the best I can be. And now it's up to doc to take off this extra skin that I hate. And now I'm going to maintain it for the rest of my
Yeah.
life because I
And
have
my
the
life
things in
has
place to
changed.
do it.
Yeah.
And I feel great in my body. And why shouldn't everyone be able to feel the best in their
Oh,
body?
God, it's our home.
Well, and I think there is something to say about all of that. That I mean, for you to be able to be that safe adult, whether you are speaking with young adults or adults,
Mhm.
but I think it is some like coming to someone like you. And someone might be sharing something that they have never shared before. It's super vulnerable. Like being like, I hate the way that I look, and I've been holding
Mhm.
this in for 20 years, and I'm coming to you because I need help.
Mhm.
And for you to have, again, the awareness to really listen to them, to guide them, like, hey, let's actually let's try this first, or go talk to this person first. Like
Mhm.
it is so heartwarming to hear,
Yeah.
and promising that you see how it works well in your practice, that you want to carry it out with other practices.
I
Do you
just
get
care about
pushback on
people.
that?
Yeah.
Like, are people frustrated when you say, let's take a different route first?
I've only had a couple people push back on the mental health specialist when we were kind of mandating that everyone did it, but most people are okay with it.
Okay.
And I'll tell you, like I have a story I'll tell you. This is a pretty crazy story. A woman that I did a breast cancer reconstruction on many years ago, one of my oldest patients, came back for a revision, struggled with weight loss her whole life. It's always been kind of an up and down. And she came in almost for one of her last visits with me. We'd done some revisionary surgery for her breast, and we were talking about weight loss and health and wellness. And as we're having this conversation, I'm like, have you ever talked to a nutritionist? And I have a mental health specialist, and maybe I have someone who can help you. And she's like, no, I haven't. Long story short, this is what I'm talking about. This is where I feel like practices are kind of failing, and maybe just not everyone's like me. I have these conversations with people.
Yeah.
She confides in me that she was sexually abused as a child,
Mm.
right? And she talks about her ex-husband and how she was always heavy and didn't want to have sex with him.
Right.
And as we're having this conversation, I'm like, so do you think that you were intentionally yo-yoing with your weight because you're nervous to make yourself sexy to have sex because you were abused at a young age and you've just never dealt with that? And
Right.
she started crying.
Yeah.
Oh,
And I said, listen,
I'm like that. Those are the conversations.
I feel you. It's never happened to me, so I can't know what that
Yeah.
feels like. But if you're looking for an explanation why you've been yo-yoing your whole life and you can't lose weight, this is it. And you need to talk to
Yeah.
someone about it.
Yeah.
And she was like, okay, like I want to do that.
well,
like
because
I
at
need
that
to.
point, nothing else you do is going to
There's
matter.
nothing
It's a
that I could do
Band-Aid.
surgically.
Yeah.
Let's just
You're
say,
right.
let's
It's
just,
not a
yeah,
Band-Aid.
let's say I did lipo or tummy
Yeah.
tuck on her.
Wouldn't matter.
It wouldn't matter because her mind hadn't
Right.
been
Yeah.
repaired. And until she repaired her mind, the surgery was irrelevant. And so I think I want surgeons to be more in tune with the fact that the person sitting in front of you is not just a body to do
It's
an
a
operation on to
person.
make them look good. And you might be
Right.
talented at doing it.
Yeah.
But there's a little bit more to the story, right? And as soon as she confided in me that she had yo-yoed with her weight her whole life, I just kind of probed a little bit and this came out. And it was like,
Yeah.
oh crap. No, I'm not equipped to help you with that.
Right.
But I can
But I
send
have
you to
people
someone who
do.
can.
Yeah.
There's resources. God, and that's such a good point because we talk all the time about how different generations have different problems with their parents or
Mhm.
things that they grew up with, default programming and whatnot. Use that with your kids too. Don't carry on what you got from your parents to your kids so they continue to have and showcase the same problems, right? We have to have space for our kids, which is where we like to come in to give them room to talk about things like that they may never have talked about before. I mean, she's, what did you say, well into her 50s?
Oh yeah.
60s? I mean, to hold that for so long
Oh,
Whole
is
life.
such I mean, it's awful.
Yeah.
And I'm sure it ruined so many things that she had going on for
It
herself.
happens
Yes.
all the
We
time.
don't want that for your girls.
Right.
So yes, obviously, in your case, Jill, there was something that completed you. But I'd imagine too, in a lot of cases, to want to change your body, there is a lot going on in your head for you to get to that point, to think that that's going to be the solve.
Right.
So
These
just-
girls that you guys help,
yeah.
do you find them talking about wanting to have procedures and filler and Botox and operations? Like, does that stuff come up?
I think we're a little young for that, but what they do talk about is not liking their body.
Yeah.
Or what other people have said to them and how they take that on and internalize it or wear it as armor now. So yeah,
Whether it's their smile or their eyes, it's definitely from other people poking at them.
so it's laying the foundation for those conversations to start, especially, like I said, I'm all over TikTok. I'm trying to get news and make sure people know what's going on with this generation. But like Alex Earl, beautiful, popular, amazing, like good for her. She's doing the thing. But she's getting filler and lip. She's 21 years old. So she's getting Botox and filler and she's gorgeous. And these girls are seeing this girl come up and gain notoriety. And if they already don't like something about themselves, then they see that as the solve. Well, I could just go do what Alex Earl did. I could get the Kim Kardashian procedure, right? We plaster these women all over. We put them front and center as an example. So it seems like the solve.
Yeah.
So we're, like I said, we're a little young for that, but the foundation is being laid in what they're hearing about themselves, then what they're thinking about themselves, then how they're speaking about themselves. It's the writing's on the wall.
You know, one of the lateral problems with this is there are a lot of ethical surgeons out there that turn these people away. And that's why you see these people go into hotel rooms and getting
Get
silicone
botched.
injected in their faces. They get botched because good surgeons and good providers have said no. And they're determined
like,
to
well,
hear
guess what?
yes.
I'm going to
So
find
they
somebody
go
who's
to
going
the
to
black market
do
and
what I
that's,
want.
I'll tell you what, man, it's a problem.
Yeah.
A problem.
Oh my gosh, this was such a amazing
Yeah.
conversation.
So with that said, make sure you're having conversations with your daughter because we don't want her to end up in a hotel room with a botched filler.
right,
And
and
listen-
not only your daughter, but you too.
And the question that you asked, I think also for parents out there is just, you know, if you are going to be okay with a kid having a procedure, doing something, you've got to do diligence and do your research. I know it can be very hard, but for people out there that need to know, every state has a medical board. You can go to their website. You can look up the doctor. You can make sure they're board certified by the American Board of Plastic Surgery. It is the only board that certifies plastic surgery in this country. Look up if they've had injunctions against them or claims or fraudulent things happen. Like there is information at your fingertips. Make sure that you just go visit with many surgeons and make sure that you jive with them.
Well, and we'll include a little checklist along with this episode if people are interested in learning more on kind of the steps that they should take. So a roadmap per se on if this is something they're thinking either for themselves or even conversations with their kids, that they can have an appropriate step-by-step guide,
They need
if
to
you
buy
will.
my book, The Real Beauty Bible.
the real
Well, we
beauty
will absolutely
Bible.
include that in our show notes as
It
well.
goes through
Yeah.
all of this, but no,
Yeah,
for
great.
sure.
Cool.
So,
I mean,
Ricky,
Dr. Ricky B, come on now.
the real TikTok
The real
doc.
TikTok.
Well, I love what you guys are doing. I think young women need it. Obviously, boys are important too. Your focus
course.
just happens to
Yeah.
be young women. And it's really good to have women out there like you guys, you know, showing them and being a role model to just live who they are and accept who they are. And also, if one day at a mature age they want to do something, that's okay too.
Right.
As long as it's for the right reasons.
As long as
Exactly.
it's for the right
Yeah.
reasons. Do the
Well,
work. Yeah.
We appreciate you. And
Yeah, thank you.
honestly, the work that you do is incredible as well.
Thank
so thank you.
Appreciate you.
You guys, we'll see you on the next episode of What's the Lesson? See ya.
Bye, everyone.